Unlock the door!
Greetings, Legionnaires, and thank you so much for joining me here today, because we are going to be talking about a game that has been on everybody's minds for a long time, and I finally finished it the other day. And that game is... Now, Red Dead Redemption 2 has been something I've been looking forward to for a long time, and before we get into it, I just want to say this right now. Spoiler alert, this is a spoiler alert for the story of Red Dead Redemption 2. And probably some of Red Dead Redemption, maybe, just in case. I just want to cover all my bases. I don't want you to watch this and be like, oh, he ruined it. So... Just know that right now. Spoiler alert, just come back after you beat the game, or if you don't care about that as far as story stuff is concerned, then keep watching. So, Red Dead Redemption was a game that I played back in college. I really enjoyed it. I loved the story of John Marston, and I always thought he was a cool character, and I always kind of felt for the guy. I'm like, yep, I get it. I get where you're coming from, but there was always this kind of nagging question of, like, his backstory, because I never really knew it. That's what this game is. So even though Red Dead Redemption 2 is a sequel in our time, chronologically, it's actually a prequel to Red Dead Redemption. This is telling the story of John Marston's gang that he was a part of, the Vanderlyn gang, run by Dutch Vanderlyn. But we'll get to him in a second. So, let's hop into the story right now. You play as Arthur Morgan, the right-hand man of Dutch Vanderlyn. He is an interesting character. He might be one of my favorite things about the entire game. You get to basically play him in two separate ways. You can either kind of play like the bad guy or the good guy, but for most of the story stuff, I would say he's much more of, he's the good guy, he's the honorable guy. You can make choices that are dishonorable, but for the most part, he kind of wants to do the right thing. And I would say that, along with all of that, character development that you get with Arthur, because he does kind of start off as mostly just the bad guy, over time you get to see the changes in him and kind of acknowledge the fact that maybe this gang isn't such a great thing to be a part of, which I love seeing, and it goes for a long time. And also know this, Red Dead Redemption 2 is not a game you can just hop into or whatever. We talked about Dragon Quest XI recently. This is another game that you need to commit to, because this story is very, very long. And it's something that you have to consider, because there's just so much to it. And when you think it's going to be done, it's like it keeps going and going and going. But it just gives you so much. And a lot of the stuff, especially at the end, could have probably been DLC, but it was all part of the package, which I really appreciated. So Arthur Morgan, he's such a lovely character. I love the voice acting by him, and I do enjoy playing as him. I think he's really fun, and the way I kind of had him, as I did play more honorably. I also had him like in a black duster and a big Valley hat. I think that's what I'd call Big Valley hat. And I just kind of went around and was trying to be the good guy as much as I could be, being a part of this kind of thieving, murdering gang, as it were. And that's another thing I really want to laud, and talk about. This is something that we'll get into in the highlights, I'm sure, some more, but the gang that you're a part of. So you kind of move around with this gang and you kind of upgrade stuff over time, and that's another interesting facet of this game, is that while you are going through this world and kind of shooting outlaws and lawmen alike, you're also upgrading your base, which basically means every mission you do, a cut of that typically goes to the gang or the group. If you put more money into the base, as far as like trying or giving them food and stuff, that also increases your honor, which I guess you could debate if giving money to an immoral gang is an honorable thing. Anyway, but you're trying to provide for women and children that are part of the gang as well, kind of the husbands, the wives, the girlfriends, and the children, everybody who's kind of a part of this, who might not necessarily be fighting all the time. They might just be, like a butcher might just be part of your gang and things like that. But you do get to know everybody pretty well, which is that's pretty cool too. And there's a lot of standout characters, which we will get to, don't worry. But learning where your place is within the group, and how new members of the group, how they come in, how some people leave because they want to just get out, or they get killed really quickly and it's like they're dead, goodbye, and it's like, oh my gosh, that person's dead. Really crazy moments like that.
Turned into a bunch of killers, I mean it. We ain't even got the delusion of being anything but a bunch of killers.
We are just trying to survive, Hosea.
So, we moving?
Yeah. This'll end soon.
Damn right it will.
Constipated as usual.
And at the head of all this is Dutch. And also there's so many details in this game, but one thing you will notice early on, or at least I did, is that all the money and the kind of the box that has all that is right next to Dutch's tent all the time. So if you want any, put some money in there or do anything like that to help, bolster the place or kind of add on upgrades, yeah, you're giving it basically to Dutch in a way. But yeah, and then this is the story of kind of like the gang moving throughout this world and kind of trying to find a place to call home and just to get more money. We need more money and time. That's what Dutch always says. We need time and we can get money and we can move and we can go to Tahiti. And he wants to get out. He always talks about getting out, but there's always one last big score. And after that, there's always one other big score. It's just kind of, you can see it kind of snowballs over time. And that's where the story might drag just a smidge for people. I know I felt it myself. So, yeah, that's pretty much the story right there for the most part. Kind of seeing this gang, how it operates, how John Marston, who is the lead character of Red Dead Redemption, is a part of it. Because he kind of plays a small role in the beginning. And I was like, oh, I don't know if he'll be in it much. And then he's in it pretty much the whole time, which is really cool. And to see how he changes and how Arthur affects him. Because I don't remember him talking about Arthur much in Red Dead Redemption. It's been a long time. He probably did. He might have mentioned him. I don't remember. It's one of those things where they had to make a new character, and they're like, all right, we got to put him in here, but people can't really know about him because we didn't talk about him much. I'm not sure. Anyway. But yeah, and then seeing how that group over time fractures, because you see that in the beginning, they kind of have cohesion, but there's things that start to happen, especially with Dutch, and some of the people are like, I don't know if we should trust this guy anymore, and it's cool to see how the group splits kind of down the middle eventually, and Arthur is kind of the head of another group. Fascinating stuff. But besides that, this is a third-person shooter, so most of the time you're running through these towns and stuff. If you do get in gunfights, you are using, guns. You have knives, and you've got throwing knives, I should say. You also have, I think, you have a tomahawk, you can get a machete, dynamites, things like that. But that's pretty much how you interact as far as combat goes. But you're walking around this world from that third-person perspective, and it really benefits for it. You can switch to first-person if you'd like to, but I typically kept it in third person myself, just because I like to bask in all the glory of everything around me, and also really appreciate how Arthur looked, because I got to dress him up, and I really enjoyed that. And I'm usually like a guy who picks like one outfit for my character, and then I'm like, yep, we're good. So yeah, that is pretty much that. But let's jump into the highlights. Oh man, there are so many. Let's start with the details. That's the one thing that I think a lot of people come back to. The details in this game are crazy. There are so many little things that you're going to find, and even from the beginning of the game, you start off in kind of this snowy area. And I remember getting in a shootout right away, and shooting and hitting an icicle, and that icicle just fell down, and I was like, oh, whoa. Actually, like, my bullet hit the icicle, fell down, and I couldn't hit that guy, but now I can, because I shot through that icicle. I'm like, wow, that's crazy. And it's a little jarring at first, but literally picking up everything off of the environment that you need. You don't, besides ammo, you have to literally physically pick things up, and right away it's like, oh, whoa, this is weird. It's really slow. You gotta like open up the cupboards and you kind of grab things out. Gets a little tedious, but you start to understand why, and it really does a really great job of immersing you in this whole place. Because there were times, there's especially one or two nights where I was playing and I was just enveloped in this world. I was just like right in there. And that's huge for me. I love that in games. And little details like a shop owner remembering you from a long time ago, or maybe he would say hello again in a different way if you walk out and then walk right back in. He'll be like, oh, back so soon. It's safer in here, I guess, than it is out there. Like, stuff like that really goes a long way to saying like, hey, these aren't just computers in this world. These are people that have lives, and you're just kind of, you're intersecting with them at these moments, but they remember you, or they might be like, oh, hey, mister, you lost some weight. And be like, yeah, that's because I'm dying of tuberculosis. Like, it's kind of a big thing. So that stuff I love. The menus are crazy. These catalogs that you get to look through, these old-timey catalogs where you buy your guns and your hats and all that stuff. So cool, so well done, and it makes so much sense because it contextualizes those menu screens, and I'm really big about that, contextualizing that stuff. It's not just you go to a store clerk and there's just a window that pops up and it's just like, buy these things. It's like, yep, here's the catalog. You do that with your fence. Like if you have to sell things, you find off people like rings and things, you can sell those. But with the catalogs, I think there's just another level. It kind of reminds me of, even though it's not contextualized, the Persona 5 menu screens. These are the new best menu screens besides Persona 5. Just so much antiquity in it. It just feels so real and tangible, and I really like that. And antiquity as far as like, it's old because it's supposed to be old in this world, but it's like a new age way of thinking about menu screens. I know it's a little thing, but it's a big deal. Maintaining your guns is something else I kind of enjoyed. Your guns get worn over time, then you can clean them up, and you have to literally remember where you put your guns, because if you don't take your certain main guns, besides your pistols, off your horse, those are with your horse. So you have to make sure to be like, all right, gotta equip those. Make sure to bring them with you. And the guns do feel really good, and they sound really good. The sound design in this game and the music also really, really good. Even from the Rockstar logo in the beginning, where they load up like a double barrel shotgun and shoot it just sounds incredibly good. And when you're actually using these weapons, they feel nice. And the music just throughout too, just the nuance of some of the nice riding music versus like the actual vocalized lyrics of some of these more poignant songs. Wonderful as well.
It's over now!
The story, I would say, is also just like, we've talked about it before, but I would say it is one of the high points too. While you're in it, there are times that it kind of goes off in a direction that you're like, why are you doing this? But when it gets to the end, in the finale, and this is like into the epilogue, it's like, oh my gosh, this is really cool, and it makes you feel really wonderful. It's like, oh my gosh, that was so cool. And I also really like Deadeye. It's a lot of people don't like the whole mark and execute thing, like from Splinter Cell or maybe this game too, but you really do need it, because some of the fights, even without the auto aim, which I took the auto aim off when I'm on foot. I don't know if I'd recommend you do that, because it's very difficult to shoot people in this game unless you're using the Deadeye, which is a slow motion. It slows people down, and then you can mark targets and then shoot them all. So you feel like a cool gunslinger when you drop like 5 guys in a second, but it's because you took 10 seconds beforehand to line it all up. But yeah, oh man, I love that. Yeah, those are the things that really stuck out to me. And then finally, the characters. I already talked about Arthur a bit being really cool. There are a few I want to shout out here because I love the gang for the most part. Hosea, I love you. I love you, Hosea. You're just like, I love the old man in the group. He's rational and stuff. I love him, and unfortunately, he does die. And I was like, no! Like, when they start dropping like flies, especially after this kind of major bank robbery goes south, it's like, oh my gosh, like, it's just like, no one is safe. And I really appreciate that. And the other one that really sticks out to me is Sadie Adler. Sadie starts off in the gang as a widow. She got brought into the gang, and Dutch kind of helped her out when her husband was murdered by this other group of bad guys. And after a while, she's like, I'm sick of being in the camp. I don't want to just be in the camp. I want to go out and do stuff. And she becomes a gunslinger and eventually a bounty hunter later on. And she is excellent. I love Sadie. Sadie, you're so cool. Like, I want to play a whole game as Sadie Adler because I think she is that amazing and different. And it's nice because in this game, in this world, you don't really get too many characters like her, so she sticks out so much more, and she's so loyal to you, and you do missions with her, so you're loyal to her. I always felt loyal to her, and I love that. Another thing I do really appreciate is that the menu screen, when you kind of look on your map, it'll show you like, oh, hey, there's a mission for Sadie Adler, and if you go to her, usually you'll play that mission with her. However, once in a while, you go to a place and it'll be like, hey, there's Trelawney, and he's a guy in your group. You go to him, you talk to him for like a minute, but then he leaves, and then you end up doing a mission with someone else. So you never really know exactly whose mission you are for sure going on. And I love that because even though I love to do like the ones with Sadie or Hosea or whomever, I also really appreciate like being not tricked, but just kind of like, oh, okay, so we know you're paying attention. We know that you think that this is going to happen, but actually we're going to switch it around a little bit. A little different than you thought. It's like, cool. All right. Excellent. The group, just like them talking to each other, like listening to these conversations and watching these relationships form and who likes whom and who hates whom and all that stuff. It's so wonderful. Going on grifter missions with Hosea. There are just so many really good missions in this game. And I stuck mostly to the main path. I did some side missions too. And that's where really this place feels alive, is that you'll just be walking, not even on a side mission, and someone will come out of the woods and be like, hey, mister, I lost my horse. And sometimes that's the truth. Or you see the guy's horse take off, and you go save the horse, and you bring it back to him, and he's like, hey, man, I appreciate that. Thank you. I'll try to pay you back one day. Or near the beginning of the game, there's a guy who got bit by a rattlesnake. You suck out the venom, and he's like, hey, mister, I'll pay you back. And then you see him in town, and he's like, go on into the gun store, and you buy whatever you like. One thing on me. And it's like, that's a really cool way to contextualize the world and an upgrade. Like, that feels better to me, because intrinsically, I'm like, cool, I helped a person out, and I'm getting rewarded for it, when I was just doing it just because I wanted to. But then on the other hand, you could also be horribly like mean to people. Like, you can be the bad guy. Like, if someone's like, hey, I need your help, sir, like somebody stole my horse, or I was kidnapped, and you're like, yeah, I'm gonna kill you. Like, you can totally do that, and it's just your honor meter, which seems like a throwaway. Apparently you're supposed to get more discounts if you're more honorable, or people treat you differently if you're dishonorable. I don't know, I didn't really witness that myself, but that's just something to consider. So if you play through it, multiple times, or just even in your same playthrough, you can do a lot of bad things, and then you can still get back to being good, or vice versa. You can break bad, as it were. My gosh, and there's so much to like about this game. The wilderness, it looks beautiful. I'm on Xbox One, and it's still really stunning to me, even though I don't have like a 4K TV. I don't have Xbox One X or anything, but it still looks really nice. And there's some lighting in the game that just looks spectacular. Some of these sky domes or whatever, these you see like the lightning crashing down and all that. That's wonderful as well. I do want to touch on the online for just a second. It doesn't feel as alive as the single player, because they kind of take out all those little random encounters, but there is some fun to be had there. And I think if you really devoted that time to getting into it and making your own posse and going around doing missions, there can be some fun there. However, it's still hard to make money. They kind of changed that. Rockstar has since kind of like given people free money within the game and free gold bars, which are a different type of currency. So there's that to consider as well. But yeah, it's fine. It didn't really grab us in the same way as we were hoping it would, like a Monster Hunter or hopefully Anthem will. So that's something to keep in mind as well. It's not bad by any means, and it still functions pretty well. I wasn't really pulled into it in the same way. So there's that. It's great. I think there's a lot of depth to it to some degree, and it's cool that you actually get to be in this world with your buddies. I guess you have to commit more time to it to really get a good feeling for it. But it's just not as, it's not as engrossing to me as that single player campaign. And it can't be, because there's a lot of people running around, and it's hard to, keep that same kind of narrative and that same kind of feel throughout if people are just running around shooting each other all the time. So consider that too, but that is part of the package. So I wanted to wait until that was out and at least report on it, because it is functioning, and I haven't really had too many problems being in it as far as technical difficulties are concerned. Let's switch gears here to the shortcomings, because this game, unlike a lot of people in their reviews, it is not perfect. One of the biggest things I would say I have a complaint about are the controls. The controls of Rockstar games have never been superb. They've always been not great. You do feel kind of like a person who's like fighting molasses a lot of the time, and controlling Arthur can be difficult. So keep that in mind. Also, I would recommend keeping the auto aim on. I did play through the game without it on, like I said before. It's just a lot harder. So basically what happens is, if you get in a fight, when you sight up, you usually kind of click right to the person that you're closest to with your reticle. And I will say this, I like that the reticle in this game starts off, if you're kind of moving or right when you're aiming, it starts as a circle that goes to a dot. I think that's smart, because that makes more sense to me, because in past games it would just be a dot all the time. I get that a bullet is a dot. I understand that, but like, if I'm shooting a gun, it's not always going to go right at the same spot every time. There needs to be some sort of spread. Yeah, that's just something to consider too. So I wasn't a huge fan of the shooting, and there were some pretty decent glitches in this game. One of the biggest ones, I think, was when I lost my horse. So I have my horse named Despair, because you guys know me, I love Darksiders, Death and Despair. You see where I'm going. And I lost it. Like, there was something like I lost it in, like, it like glitched out or changed my horse, basically. So the coloration and the breed were completely different. So I was like, oh, hey, there's Despair, but Despair's not white anymore. It's like brown or black and a different breed of what the heck happened. And that's a big deal in this game, because your horse is huge. Like, it's a really big part of your traveling. It helps you out. It carries all of your stuff for you. And you have this really emotional moment with it at the end of the game, which I started to tear up with, even though this was a different horse that I got later on. It's a big black draft horse that I really enjoyed, which I don't remember if I ever named him, but I was like, okay, there we go. So that kind of sucked. I also had a moment where I was trying to kind of push the game's limits a little bit, in that I was trying to bring a man to justice. I tied him up and I was going to bring him to the sheriff's office, and he disappeared out of my hands. And I was like, okay, I pushed the game a little too far there. I'm sorry. So yeah, little things like that, they do pop up. This is an open world game, so you're going to have crazy bugs and glitches still. But I just wanted people to know that it is not perfect, and the shooting controls and just the controls of the characters could be better. I wish they were. And it is fun to switch, because eventually you do turn the corner and you stop playing as Arthur and you start playing as John Marston, and you get to kind of lead up into Red Dead Redemption, which is really cool. So I appreciate that. It's just that jumping back into this game after certain other games that I've played, it's like, oh man, this is hard to control. It's not easy. Yeah, that's kind of the biggest takeaway as far as that goes. I will say this though too, even though I'd say the story is one of the biggest draws to this game, there are moments where I think, where the heck is this going? They go to an island called Guarma for a bit, and it feels like such a sidetrack, and it feels so unnecessary to the entirety of the game. I'm thinking like, oh, why is this even in here? And also there's a moment near the end where Dutch shows up one last time, kind of does something and leaves. Feels kind of weird to have him show up and then go away like that. He's kind of a big deal, because you end up kind of really hating Dutch. Especially, he does such a good job. The voice acting on Dutch is so good, and especially the part where the group starts to fracture, and Arthur says to him, I insist on this, and Dutch says, you insist? And Arthur says, yeah, I do. And that really sticks with Dutch. He's like, oh, he insists on this. So you start to see that, and you start to hate certain members of the group, like Micah. And when you get this moment to confront Mike at the end, it's like, okay, Dutch, I get why you're here, but also, why are you here? Like, it's okay, great, you're here. Yeah, that's pretty much it. The story does drag at parts, because it's like a 70-hour story, and you can get really, really into it with some of these people and some of these other side quests and other characters, like Rainsfall, the leader of this Native American tribe, who is really interesting, and his kind of brash son Eagle Flies and all of that, and Dutch kind of using them to his advantage. That is just one example of that. And you get some of these cool characters in the online as well, as far as like, they're cool, but they're not the same. They're different characters, like this Marshall that you end up working with. The problem is, unlike Grand Theft Auto 5, you don't really deal with anybody from the main game, or at least I haven't yet. I wish we could be part of Dutch's gang, or a rival gang, or see some of these other members that I kind of fell in love with, and see them out in the world as it's still continuing. So it's like, maybe there's a time jump, maybe it's the same time, I don't know. I just want to see more of those people again. That's just a personal thing for me. So, yeah, it's hard. It's hard to rate this game on a scale from 1 to 10. A lot of people, I think, consider this game to be just totally incredible, and there are some things about that are, but to me, there are some decently glaring flaws that we have to address, and that is why I'm giving it a 9 out of 10. I would recommend this game to a lot of people. I would say, you know what, there's plenty here for your money's worth. There's a lot to do. There's so much to do. There's hunting, there's fishing, there's all these little missions you can take on in the interim, and getting lost and fully engrossed and enveloped in this world is the whole point of this game, and I totally was there for a few times, but there were some times where I was like, oh my gosh, this game is going on forever and ever and ever. I just want to wrap it up. I just wanted to get to the end of the story so I could kind of go enjoy more of the online or do more things. So I would recommend this game if you have a lot of spare time, or if you're willing to kind of commit to it over a long period of time, but just make sure you visit it regularly, because you'll forget the controls, and the controls are so wonky. I forgot to mention this, but like the highlight, or not a highlight, but it's like to get the gun, to highlight that gun, you have to open your weapon wheel and then like click over with it and then pick that one. It's so, the weapon wheel stuff, the controls, and the shooting all just need to be revamped. The problem is the game sold incredibly well, so they're like, why would we revamp this? It's just like, I wish Rockstar, please, if you're watching this, consider it, okay? Thank you so much for everybody hanging out with me here today. If you want to see more videos like this, subscribe to the channel. If you subscribed for a while and you want to support us even further, consider going over to our merch store over on Spreadshirt, get yourself a t-shirt or something like that, or you can donate to us over on patreon.com/criticalreviews. Thank you guys so much. I appreciate it. I hope you like this style of review. Again, it's been a very busy year, so please let me know if you like it. If you don't, give me feedback. I want it. Let me know. Either way, thank you so much, and just remember to adapt and overcome. And we'll see you next time. Bye.
Get him, boys!